Hi, everyone. On behalf of the National Alliance for HIV Education Workforce Development, also known as NAHUD, I would like to welcome you to our monthly webinar series, and thank you for participating. Before we begin, I would like to review some housekeeping items. We invite you to use the chat to engage with your fellow attendees. Today's session is being recorded. The session recording and a PDF of the presentation slides will be added to the NAHUD's website as a resource. You will also receive this information in the post-webinar email that will be sent out through Zoom. You can also visit NAHU's resource page on the website to find this resource and view past sessions. So before we get into today's session, I would like to just give some background on NAHUD. So NAHU is a membership organization of 8 regional and 2 national AIDS education and training centers. Established in 2010, NAHU supports the ATCs, a component of the HRSA-funded Ryan White HIV/AIDS program, which have an explicit directive to build and maintain a well-educated and culturally sensitive health professions workforce that can provide prevention, diagnosis, care and treatment, and medical management for people at risk for and living with HIV. NAHU collaborates with multiple organizations to promote and educate on the work of the ATC program. Since 2018, NAHU has been funded by the American Academy of Addiction Psychiatry as a partner organization of the Opioid Response Network to address the intersection of HIV and opioid use disorder. ORN was created to support efforts in addressing the prevention, treatment, and recovery and harm reduction of opioid use disorders and other substance use disorders through the provision of locally designed education and training. We invite you to visit their website to submit a TA request, read case studies, see featured resources, check out upcoming ORN events and trainings, learn about ORN work groups addressing health disparities, and more. So we really value and welcome your feedback on today's webinar. We will include a link to the evaluation towards the end of the session, and it will also be included in the post-webinar email. We ask that you complete it within 2 weeks. Unfortunately, once we close the evaluation, we cannot reopen it. That information is sent to our CE providers. So you will get a reminder. So you'll have your opportunity today. You will get your post-webinar email tomorrow, and you will get a reminder next week if you haven't had the opportunity. But we just ask that you go ahead and complete it at your earliest convenience so that you can get your CE credits or your certificate of attendance if that's what you are looking for. So if you are requesting CE credit or certificate of attendance, you will need to complete the evaluation to receive contact hours for participating in this program. You must join the webinar, attend at least 60% of the presentation, and complete and submit the electronic evaluation. You will receive your requested certificate within 3 weeks of submission of the evaluation. So with that said, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce today's moderator. Joseph is a dedicated advocate for recovery and accomplished leader in the field. He began his journey with the Recovery Alliance of El Paso in 2005 and has since become a respected mentor and trainer for peer recovery support services. With a background in recovery, coaching, curriculum development, and training, he's passionate about helping others in their recovery. Joseph also champions the LGBTQ plus community, offering a positive voice against homophobia and heterosexism while openly living with HIV since 2003. As Chief Program Officer, he leads the strategic development and management of recovery programs, fostering a culture of servant leadership and teamwork. Joseph's work extends to creating statewide and national standards for peer recovery support services. So without further ado, I would like to pass it over to Joseph.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Good day. Um, as mentioned, my name is Joseph Sanchez. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a person in recovery and have been living with HIV for over 21 years. If we could pull up those slides there, Patrick. I'm super honored, humbled to be moderator for this panel. This is a second panel discussion on the topic. mainly because I get to hear from such like awesome folks doing some great work in the field and in their lives, but champions as well. Um, I wasn't always pulled together as this beautiful beam of light. If you can go back one slide, Patrick. For our learning objectives, we hope at the end of this panel, um, participants are able to really explore and get some ideas around integrated care models, understand the role of mental health and recovery, advocate for comprehensive recovery programs, break down stigma through advocacy, enhance long-term support and employment integration, and learn from lived experience in real-time recovery. And uh, attendees will get a version of this slide deck. Just FYI, just not a huge fan of reading a slide to you all. So as I mentioned before, haven't always been put together in my life. And quite honestly, beyond tech challenges today and some bumps and bruises along the way, um, uh, this is as good as it gets for a little while. I started using substances at an early age, and in my early 20s, I was diagnosed HIV positive. Letting my life spiral further after that diagnosis, surviving attempts at suicide, only to find myself back in my hometown of El Paso, Texas, and starting a journey of recovery that would, quite honestly transform my life. Today, I have over 19 years in recovery and free from destructive substance use. My life looks considerably different. And I think you'll hear that echoed with our panelists as well. I'm an advocate for the queer community, currently undetectable, healthy in mind, body, and soul, and live in my purpose, empowering and educating others and growing leaders across the country in my role here with Faces and Voices of Recovery as Chief Program Officer. I'm blessed for having dodged many life-threatening circumstances and to be in better health, but that is not the case for a lot of people. This past Sunday, December 1st, was World AIDS Day. If you aren't familiar with World AIDS Day, it was started by two public information officers at the WHO, the World Health Organization, back in 1988. Um, each year, World AIDS Day has a theme related to HIV. This year, it is collective action, sustain and accelerate HIV progress. And I feel that's perfect for what we have going on here today with our panel. Here's some resources and more information about World AIDS Day. Again, you'll get a PDF version where you can click on those links. And a lot of this information and some of the resources here can help get the word out to your communities, your workspaces, and on social media to raise awareness and end stigma. Before we get started, we'd like to thank our panelists for sharing these very vulnerable and intimate moments with us. We want to recognize that not everyone's journey and process is the same, and we have the opportunity today to listen to how we can make improvements to our systems of care. So we're going to introduce our panelists, and I'm going to ask our panelists after I take a little moistening of the chops here. I'll ask our panelists to introduce themselves in this way: their name, their preferred pronouns, where they're currently located, and what work you do to raise awareness around HIV/AIDS and or substance use disorders. And we will start with Rika.
Hola, can you hear me?
I sure can.
Okay, just want to make sure because technical things happen all the time for me. I am Rica Rodriguez. I use she, her, pronouns. I reside in Commerce City, Colorado, and I have been in long-term non-abstinent recovery from opioids for 18 years and from methamphetamines for 22 years. I am a national certified harm reductionist, a certified peer recovery coach supervisor, and a peer and family specialist who has been living and thriving with HIV for over 35 years. As a result of my diagnosis in 1989 at the young age of 13, when people were dying left and right from complications of HIV, and it was a death sentence, I quickly spiraled down a road of self-destruction. I joined a gang. I became severely addicted to various substances and extremely toxic relationships. In 2002, I was blessed with my wake-up call, which came in the form of my firstborn baby girl who was diagnosed with Down syndrome. It was very clear to me that I needed to make some changes in my life, or I was going to ruin her life just as I ruined my own. And so I enrolled into schooling. I got my GED, enrolled into college courses, and I became a very passionate and advocate, dedicated, and empowering advocate for people who are living with HIV and people who look like me, specific, and in hopes to break down barriers for people just like myself. And today I'm the founder and executive director of an amazing organization called Promotores de Esperanza, which translates to Promoters of Hope in English. We are an HIV positive support place for people men who have sex with men, and for anybody who identifies as a woman. We also provide a lot of different types of harm reduction education, overdose awareness and prevention. We do Narcan, fentanyl test strip, and xylazine test strip distribution. And then we provide a lot of linkage to care, one-on-one peer recovery support group, as well one-on-one support, as well as support groups. We're also certified AccuDetox providers, and 100% of our staff are living and lived experience individuals. So thank you for having me today. I appreciate everybody, all the sponsors, and everybody who is here today.
Thank you so much. And oof, I can't wait to get in our questions and get to learn more about you and the work that you do. We're going to go to Chris. Chris,
Hey,
good to
all
see
my,
you again.
it is good to see you. Good morning, good afternoon, good day. My name is Chris Patterson Rosso. I reside in Brooklyn, New York. I use they, them pronouns. What else? A little bit about me. I guess I was diagnosed with HIV in 2005. I had been using crystal meth for about 5 years at that time. And in those communities, there aren't a lot of talks around safer sex. And that just sort of led to a life of I want to use the word debauchery. That's the word that's coming to mind, but it just is it was a lot of demoralization, right? And I was lucky enough to have, I don't know, the strength to surrender. In 2015, I got sober. And in that time, I have started an organization called the Black Yard Collective. And what we do is we focus on Black, queer, and trans folks seeking recovery and community. And as we know, Black and brown folks are highly affected by HIV/AIDS. And when that's coupled with substance abuse disorder, it just sort of exacerbates the problem. And so what we've done is really looking at the recovery community and seeing how we can um, build better practices around anti-racism within the recovery community and build community for ourselves and let us know that we're not alone and that recovery is for us and that so many of our stories are similar even though we have come from different backgrounds. We are a newer organization, but we are growing very rapidly. We've got some great grants this year to do some bigger things. We usually do a Juneteenth celebration every year. We've started a collective conversation series where we bring in different specialists and talk about the things that are affecting our community. And we're looking to hold a conference in the next 2 years. So that's me.
Wow, exciting. So much excitement. All right, up in New York area, lot happening there and much needed, especially in our Black and brown communities. Thank you, Chris. MJ.
Ah.
Oh my goodness, I think Rika and I have the same little problem with technology. Well, good morning, and thank you all for being here. Wow, I'm just blessed to be here myself. My name is MJ. Everybody can call me MJ. My name is Mary Jane Mestis, so you know why I go by MJ. I use she, her, AI pronouns. I currently live in Arvada. I am an over the road. I'm a retired over the road truck driver. I drove truck for many years, off and on, and then and I used substance all the way through it. I would go on the road for about 4 years at a time, not all at once. Of course, I'd come home about every 6 weeks, spend time with family, about 4 days off, I'd go again. I really didn't use substance on the road until maybe the last part. I think I used some probably the last 4 years because I was really into my substance, which was meth. So anyway, I was driving truck about 4 years. I got real sick and I couldn't figure out what was going on. What's going on? So I had rash. I was losing weight. I was sick. I finally said, I'm going to take a break. And I took a break, came to Colorado where my parents were living. I took a leave of absence because I didn't have insurance. I became indigent here in Denver. And I went to a doctor, and the doctor decided to do all the tests. Well, long story short, I was HIV positive. 5 days later, I found out I was living with AIDS. I had a CD4 count of 79. So I worked really diligently with doctors to really get better. And because I was told I was on that side of death's door and they wanted me on this side. So I took all the pills, did all the things, right? And then my kidneys failed. So then because of that, I had to become a retired truck driver, which I never thought I'd ever become. In 6 years of being retired, I spent uh, many days in my room, enveloped into every information I could about HIV, blah, blah, blah. And then I found a group called PWN. And I decided to go to an advocacy training, which I had no idea. Coming from a small town, Delta, Colorado, I didn't know that people advocated. I didn't know people went to the Capitol and talked to the reps. I had no idea this went on. I lived in my own little world over there. Um, Once I realized and went to this training, and I met Barb Cardell and Miss Rico Rodriguez, and that was in 2017. So that changed my life. Just real quick, I remember one gentleman in that meeting. When we went around and talked about what was important about HIV or what was the best thing that happened to him and the worst. And I think he said the worst was probably a parent dying. I can't exactly remember, but I do remember the best. And he said the best thing that ever happened to me was living with HIV, finding out I was living with HIV. And I literally gasped and I was like, are you out of your mind? Are you crazy? It's the worst thing that ever happened to me at that moment. But I can say today, it is the best thing that happened to me. Why? Because that made me who I am. I found my voice. I am now the co-chair for the Colorado chapter of PWN USA. PWN changed my life. Of course, Positive Women's Network is the largest HIV advocacy org led by diverse women living with HIV. And they shape policy that helps people living with HIV. I've been living with HIV once again since 2011. I am in the second year of a 2-year internship with the National HIV and AIDS Housing Coalition. I sit on the board of the Latina Safe House, and I'm truly blessed to be working for Promotores de Esperanza as a peer recovery specialist and a certified detoxist. And I love working with the community, and I'm very proud to have 4 years, 2 months, and 25 days of non-abstinent recovery today. And last but not least, my greatest hope is to become the first person living with HIV and substance use disorder to become a Colorado state representative. That's
Yes.
me. That's me.
And we are so blessed and lucky to have you. If you can't hear it, got me in the feels. Got me in the feels. So that didn't take long. Thank you so much. Miguel, over to you.
Hey everyone, my name is Miguel. Very happy to be here. Thank y'all for having me. My pronouns are he, they. Um, I am currently in Austin, Texas, where I have been for almost 5 years now. I've been in Texas for about 16 years. Most of, all of that time working in the queer community, mostly as a bartender, but also getting to know the community and helping out in different ways and stuff. Um, I grew up in Argentina. My parents raised me in a religious cult that had is a whole separate subject on its own, but was a growing up there was a lot of things that happened that were the catalyst for my substance use, and as a result of a lot of traumas that I went through. And so I came out of the closet when I was about 20, and I started bartending, um, which was my introduction into the LGBT community. And I started using to cope with my anxieties and my depression and my traumas and things like that, which spiraled for about 15 years, and turned into consistent active use of alcohol and cocaine. Um, and I moved to Texas, and I continued bartending. I had a lot of goals to do things like this in the queer community. Um, but a lot of goals that were kind of put off because of my substance use. I found out that I was HIV kind of all in the middle of that when I landed in the hospital for a substance use related emergency, and uh, was told by some random person that wasn't even on my care team, in a very casual way right before I went into surgery, and that kind of spiraled my addiction a lot more. Of course, that whole surgery should have been a wake-up call, but it was not. And so, as addiction does, it spiraled even more. And not to get lost in that story, but about 10 years later, I decided that after a very long bender one weekend, during which I worked several shifts at work and drove around a lot and stuff, and could have lost my life. I decided it was time for me to get away from substance use, and that was on November 7th. That was 2 years ago, and I am very happy to be here. I'm in my little studio right now. I run a podcast right now that's going to be published in hopefully early January, where I talk with people from different parts of the queer community here in Austin, Texas. And it's something that I would like to grow to spread everywhere. I talk to them about different things like sex, sexual health, community projects, art, culture, things like that. And I spend a lot of time kind of boots on the ground, just reaching out to people in the community. I'm very vocal about my journey with HIV. And I use social media a lot to be very present and visible about my check-ins my medical check-ins at the clinics, my behavioral health journey, my mental health journey, my mental health issues, things like that. And it's something that I love doing as a platform to start a conversation and raise other people's voices about their experience and keep the conversation going, especially in the political climate we're in right now. There's a lot of fear going around, a lot of questions, and a lot of fears that community will be lost, or that because our rights will be lost, that we're going to lose our community and we're going to lose everything we built. I want to continue the first and foremost the celebration of queer people and our community, so that we're always reminded that we're here and we're not going anywhere. And second of all, empower people's voices so that we don't give up and we don't quiet down, and we keep talking about these things even if our voices are suppressed and oppression does become more prevalent. That we are still here and we can still talk and we can still raise our voices.
Absolutely. And you have the microphone set up and podcast room to amplify those voices. And got to collect myself. I mean, like, y'all introducing yourselves, and for two of our panelists, I haven't heard a bit of their story yet, and already getting all verklempt. I wanted to take down the slides and start off with our first question. When we start to look at a lot of the work that has been done, where we are on our own personal journey, health wise, I start to think about like my own beginnings and kind of some of those struggles, and think about the struggles that still folks come across when they're newly diagnosed these days. So, one of the biggest barriers to recovery for individuals living with both HIV and substance use disorder is a lot of the stigma that they face. Um, so this brings us to our first question. I want to start off with you, Miguel. Can you share your personal experiences with stigma, both societal and internalized? And what strategies have you found most effective in overcoming these challenges?
Um, Great question. Let me see. So, societal, societal stigmas. I'm gonna start like so. When I found out I was well before I found out I was positive. When I kind of tracked back and found out when the onset was, I was living in Mexico actually, and there there were I didn't get tested for about a year and a half, 2 years. I think I was 19 at the time. Um, and maybe I came out earlier than 20. Anyway, uh, there was so just in general, there's a lot of commenting and just people talking about like, be safe, get tested, things like that. But the thing was that even though there wasn't really a conversation happening about it, it was more just kind of rhetoric that people would just say every time, be safe, get tested, et cetera, et cetera. At the time, I didn't really know about really many resources to actually go and get tested or to ask questions, or nobody really talked about what living with HIV was like. So it was kind of like I had this information of like go and get tested, but then without any experience in that or without anybody talking about it, there was no like, okay, well, what happens after I get tested? What happens if I come out positive? Which that kind of fear and that anxiety kept me from going and getting tested because nobody would really tell me like where to go, and there didn't really seem to be any like queer clinics. And I would hear the conversations that were happening were like these fearful conversations about people going to their doctors and having to like hide from their families if they were HIV positive, because especially in Latin America, it's understood that like if someone finds out you're HIV positive, it's obvious you're gay, like, and that turns into a whole thing about a whole stigma about your lifestyle and your everything, you know and also having grown up in Latin America, I understand that stigma and the complications that arise from that very well. So um so yeah, in general, like, just I can't really think of any specific societal stigmas, just kind of that sort of like overhanging idea that HIV is this, these old ideas and concepts um from the AIDS pandemic, that HIV equals AIDS, and that you're diseased and you're unclean and you're dying. I honestly have to say that the majority of the stigma that I've received from being after finding out that I was HIV positive was from within the queer community. Um, that was overall just a lack of information. And this was, when I first found out, this was about between 10 and 15 years ago, and there was plenty of information out there, but things have progressed. Public information about HIV and public access to HIV care has grown a lot since then. And the queer community's concepts of what it is to be HIV positive and to live with this virus has changed a lot and become a lot more accepted because of organizations like this, and marketing tactics from more entertaining and kind of on down to earth presentations of HIV care from resources like this. But for me, honestly, getting through those stigmas was really just continuing to talk about it and talking about my journey, and hearing other people talk about their journeys with HIV has probably been the most effective for me and a lot of people that I know, because it makes it relatable, and it takes away that kind of it's not just an exchange of information about HIV. It's a story. You're telling a story about what it's like and what it might be like for somebody else. Yeah, I think honestly that has been my way of getting through the stigma, is just continuing to talk about it and continuing to start conversations about it.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely a culture and all the things that come with cultural differences, including stigma as well. Thank you so much. We are going to move to MJ. I have my order here. Again, the same question. If you could share your personal experience with stigma, societal, internalized strategies that you found most effective to overcome those challenges. Up, gotta hit that unmute.
There we go. I hit it twice. Sorry. So unfortunately, when I first found out I was living with HIV, and not first, it was quite a few years later, actually. My family pushed me away. My substance abuse had gotten really bad. I was off the chain. So they pushed me away, and I ended up in the streets. I had never been houseless before. I lived in Delta, Colorado my whole life, and here I was houseless in Arvada, Colorado. Um, Living in my car, couch surfing. Well, I remember a cousin of mine said, "Oh, come and stay with me." And I said, "Oh, cool." So the night before, we had a long conversation about HIV. I told her all the rules, or not rules, let's just say how you can get it, how you can't get it, blah, blah, blah. Education, right? So in the morning, I woke up the first morning I stayed there, or the next morning, I woke up to the pungent, horrible smell of bleach. And I thought, oh no. And then I happened to notice over on the counter there was a set of dishes, silverware and glass, coffee cup. And I said, "What is this? Do you want me, does this need put away?" She goes, "Oh no, honey, those are for you. You use those while you're staying here." Needless to say, I said, "Well, apparently the conversation we had last night did not sink in. So I'll tell you what, I think I'd rather sleep in my car." So I left, and I still talk to her today. And now that she's seen what I've done in with my life, so on and so forth, she's apologized a million times over. And I still love her to death. But I guess for me, the best thing that's worked for me is um, educating folks on HIV and substance use every chance I can. Um, I think healthcare providers need to hire peer recovery specialists. I think, I'm sorry, my mom, sorry, she's taking the dog out. I'm so sorry. Um, but so I think peer recovery specialists like myself being in the workplace is really a big help, because then you have someone that those people can talk to. And also it's just really important for the healthcare provider to have a good or a good relationship with the peer, so that they can stay in contact with the participants. I just think I'm going to go over this a lot. Probably peers are important. I think that we really help each other, especially if it's both HIV and substance use disorder.
Agreed. Very much so agreed. And the story that you tell about living with your family member with a set of dishes, yeah, hits home, but also reminds me of a Golden Girls episode where Sophia Petrillo actually writes R on one of the coffee mugs because a Rose may have been exposed. And I tell you, that show was, ahead of its time. It still had its issues, just like a lot of shows back then, but I digress professionally. Um, getting back on track, um, Chris, to you, same question. Personal experiences with stigma, societal, internalized, and strategies you found most effective to overcome those challenges.
Yeah, I was diagnosed in 2005, and which feels like forever ago now, just wild. But I think kind of like what was shared earlier, like there wasn't a lot of talk about what happens if you test positive. There was a lot of conversations around getting tested and making sure you were getting tested, but there wasn't sort of like, and then this is what happens if, right? And so I was terrified to get tested. I knew I'd been engaging in really risky behaviors for many years, and I knew that I was at risk, but I was terrified to get tested. And, when I came out at 14, um, my mom had written me a letter when I had written in my diary about my best friend and being in love with him, and she had like found it, read it, then left me this really long letter, basically condemning me. And she told me in the letter that, like, if you choose this lifestyle, you're going to die of AIDS. And so at 14, I had this in my brain. And so I was always terrified of the disease. And, I did test positive, and I was here in New York, and I didn't really have a community, and I didn't really know where to go to. And the only person that I knew was positive was my drug dealer. And he was really great in this way. He like told me where I should go get care. He gave me a book on what to do with my first year with HIV, and really just became this person that I leaned on when this thing had happened. And over time, in the beginning, I was very quiet about it. I didn't share it with my family. I didn't share with my friends. And um, that shifted. I don't know what happened. I mean, I lost a lot of years to my drug use. Like, there are things that happened, and I don't remember how they happened, but somewhere along the line, I sort of shifted and decided that I was going to be very upfront about my HIV status, and, um, very much just acting as if, right? And it has really served me well. The more I talk about it, the more I say that, like, I am a person living with this thing, and it is not holding me back from anything. It is not, I'm not dirty, I'm not unclean, all these things that are said, like, I really started to believe it. And as I started to live a fuller life and experience more things and realize that, like, this is a thing that is a part of my life, it doesn't define who I am. And the more I share about it, I'm very open about my substance use and my HIV on my social media. Um, and the amount of messages that I receive from folks that I don't know and some that I do know, like World AIDS Day, just as an example, I posted about my experience with HIV, and someone reached out to me who I had met many, many years ago. And he said to me, he was like, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but um, when we met, you were so open about your HIV. And, at the time I wasn't positive, but I just loved how you walked in that. And like, he said, so that when I eventually became HIV positive, it allowed me to do the exact same thing, right? It allowed me to be upfront and honest about it, and to own it and to claim it. And he was like, I don't know if you ever, he's like, you probably are one of these people who like do these things and don't really realize your impact. And that's true. Like, I don't understand my impact a lot of the times. It's like, for me, I'm sharing this stuff because I like people to get a good picture of who I am, and I don't want to hide those things because that leads to shame, and shame is a tricky thing for me. It leads to some really stinking thinking, and I don't like to go there. And so I share that for me, but then I also like share it so that like other folks can see that you can have the life that I have with all these things, and it doesn't have to limit you. And yeah, I don't know. Building community around folks also with HIV. When I first moved to New York, there used to be a Crystal Meth Anonymous meeting for those folks living with HIV. And that was the first time I was in a room with more people who had crystal meth use in their story, but also were living with HIV. And like, I hadn't really had a community of folks like that before. And that was really, really, really healing to sort of talk about the particular struggles that we shared. And yeah, I don't know. I think that's it. I think, just really just like continuing to own my story, not go into a shame spiral around it, and to continue to like uplift other folks who are going through similar situations. Like, I know many people who have been in recovery many years and have tested positive for HIV, and like really them sort of freaking out and being like, I don't know what I'm going to do now. And like just reminding them that like, this doesn't really change anything. Right. You are still a person who has value and who still has worth, and your life will continue. Luckily, the medications are really great now, and you can live a very long and full life. So yeah, that's it for me.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. And truly living our truth and living out loud. And whether we choose it or not, I think people do see our feet, and we in some way or another serve as role models to those behind us. And I think that living out loud as well um, really is a silent tribute to living our lives um, for those that have passed of both substance use and AIDS. Um, Rika, you've been patient. Thank you. We're gonna ask you the same question. Stigma, your personal experiences with internalized societal and the strategies to overcome those challenges.
Absolutely. So for me, I know I remained in active addiction for far too long than I should have because of the fear of asking for help. As I mentioned in my intro, I have a daughter who was born with Down syndrome, and I was afraid to ask for help because I thought they were going to come and snatch my baby away from me. She had all of these sets of needs. Like, she had a lot of medical necessities, she had a lot of doctor's appointments. And like, if I were to speak up and say that I was active in my opioid and meth addiction, what were they going to say? Oh, you don't belong. You don't deserve this baby. We're going to take this baby from you. I was a minority. I was an ex-felon. I was a gang member. I was uneducated. I was a Latina. And I was active in my addiction. And so it felt like all of the cards were truly stacked up against me. At one point in my life, I felt like I didn't even deserve sobriety because of all the stigma and shame and all in multiple levels in my life. And so I was like, why even try? Maybe this is just my life. This is what I need to deal with. And pull up your big girl panties and deal with it, right? But the power of the peer, we've heard of it. We've heard Chris say it. We've heard Miguel say it. We heard MJ say it. And I'm going to say it throughout this whole, presentation. Power of the peer is real. I have been graced to be a part of the Lift the Label campaign. And I struggled with that decision as well for multiple months prior to actually accepting because of the backlash that it might have on my family, on my kids, on my friends. And so I checked in with people and I was like, hey, how do you feel about this? If I did this campaign, like, do you think, it'll bring static? Do you think it'll bring some backlash? And people were like, you know what? You do you, Rika. You do what you feel is gonna make you happy. If it brings backlash, those are the haters. Those are the haters. And you know what happens to haters. So I decided to do it. And shortly after that, when the videos and all of the marketing materials were released, like all of my communication methods, Facebook, emails, social media, like everything started blowing up from friends and family and even complete strangers, asking me about how I did it, how I overcame, how, the opioid, addiction was so intense for them. How can they start their journey? How can they and so as a result of that leap of faith, our organization that MJ and I work with, Promotores de Esperanza, we've been able to connect over 400 individuals to different avenues of recovery and medical and mental health services. And so we know that the power of a familiar face is really real. When they see that you've overcome, that you've done some things, people latch onto that. And then, the leadership, you got to build leaders. You got to be able to educate yourself enough to be able to bring that person into the fold. We do that every day at Promotores de Esperanza. We have, newly diagnosed individuals who are now going through peer recovery certification, who are now doing, multiple levels in the HIV aspect so that they can learn and they can educate themselves and they can build and really get into a leadership position. Some of the things I think for creating safer spaces, definitely normalizing the conversations. A lot of times you go into your doctor and they talk about, your labs. They might talk about have you used recently, but they don't really get into personal conversation and get into that deep into the weeds conversation. And what is triggering you? What can we help you with? How can we support you? I think normalizing conversations is huge to breaking down the stigma. But also by implementing policy and procedures that are culturally considerate to the specific needs of people who are living with HIV and substance use disorder. Professionals they should provide ample learning and training opportunities for people who are living with SUD and HIV so that, again, they can build on their knowledge and their capacity. And then this is also very empowering for, us. It's crucial component of us growing as leaders and, really, really breaking down the stigma.
I love it. I love it. And to our attendees, if you didn't catch that link and what Rika had mentioned, it's liftthelabel.org. We dropped that into chat. The only thing that I'm a little bitter about is that if the recovery cards, you have to live in Colorado to have them shipped. But I'm
You
working
can
on
send them
that.
to me.
Oh,
Send them to me and I'll send them to you.
there you go.
We
There
work
you
around
go.
things like that. And that's a huge thing too, is we have to learn how to navigate these systems because there's so many barriers in the systems. We have to learn how to make it work.
Oh my God. And I love you for that because you set me up for this transition. Patrick, we're gonna go to slides. Thank you so much, Rika. So in talking about systems and navigating those, what I heard mentioned from our panelists around addressing stigma are being vocal, educating, having peers in the system and living our truth and being that role model and really creating community and in addressing stigma in our communities become compassionate, they become caring, and above all, they become safe. They become safe for those of us in and seeking help for substance use disorder and just simply raising our hand to say, hey, I need to get tested, or hey, I tested positive. And living in these communities that promote resilience and recovery It's not just an ideal, nor is it something that's just happening overnight. A lot of factors must be considered and implemented to create a recovery and resiliency oriented system of care. A ROSC, if you will, um, is a framework for coordinating systems, services, and supports that really build upon the strengths and resilience of individuals, families, communities to take responsibility for their health, wellness, and recovery. Here we have a definition of ROSC, and on this slide, we look at what a recovery and resiliency oriented system of care does, what it does, and really what it when implemented, um, it helps to prevent that development of new substance use disorders, of overdose deaths, reduces the harm caused by addiction in our communities, really helps individuals transition from brief experiments in recovery initiation to sustained recovery maintenance, whatever that looks like for them. And overall, promoting a good quality of life, community health, and wellness for everyone. And it will take agreements and between organizations and whether that's memorandums of understanding, memorandums of agreement, and hard contracts as well as processes and procedures, policies and procedures that build supportive, seamless linkages between organizations and businesses in our communities. And peers are that connective tissue between those entry points, so that there really truly is no wrong way to enter a system of care. In my, if we can go to that spider web slide there, thank you. In my in previous presentations, ooh, a long time ago, um, I was thinking about like how in a recovery-oriented system of care or recovery and resilient-oriented system of care, how to make it tangible rather than just an idea or a model. And I thought of a spider web. If a fly were to land in the spider web, wherever it landed in the spider web, the whole spider web would shake, would vibrate. And of course, the spider would, feel that vibration and know that, a meal has arrived. And in this sense, a recovery and resilient oriented system of care, um, if anybody, if anybody starts or enters into any organization or business within our community, the whole community would know that someone needs help. And there isn't a instance where you go to a mental health provider with a substance use issue and you get turned away because we're a mental health provider and not dealing with substance use issues, and vice versa, and so on and so forth. It's like you come to a mental health provider and you have a substance use issue and they let you in and they say, yes, we don't do that here, but sit back, relax, enjoy the show because we're going to get you connected. And we have that connection through those peers. So here in my little rough drawing, that connective tissue in between those joints, if you will, each of the joints of the spider web are like businesses or organizations, service providers, and that connective tissue in between each joint, that's the peer. The peers in the community, they have their finger on the pulse of what's happening, what isn't happening, how to navigate the systems, what lines to stand in, and when, right? And really help that person that is in and seeking any type of support along the system of care. I'm actually kind of proud of this picture. Now, the spider web itself, it's a little clip art, but the fly, I mean, come on. It's a cute little fly. I've been sharing this image for quite some time now. So taking back down our slides, we're going to go into another question to our panelists. We're going to kick this off um, to Rika. We're going to have you start this one off. I just shared a bit about recovery and really resiliency-oriented system of care, and that's a component of a component of that could include integrated care models that address both HIV and substance use recovery simultaneously. From your experience, what are the key elements of a successful integrated care plan? Second part of the question, how can healthcare professionals ensure that mental health support, harm reduction strategies, and substance use treatment are cohesively woven into recovery plans? Abbreviated. Yep, you got it.
That's a mouthful.
It is.
So I think remembering that we as individuals have the power to choose what works for us and to build our own individual care plan effectively, and that we should not ever be coerced or swayed about any decisions medically that we are making, that we do our education, that we do our research, that we really tap into the power of the peer. Hey, what works for you? Is that going to work for me? Maybe, maybe not. Um, I also feel, sorry, my page is not moving, my notes. There we go. Professionals should not be creating or dictating what service or treatment plans feels right for us because we know what's right for us. And sometimes we don't even know what's right for us. So we're going to try a few different things and then we're going to figure it out. And I also feel that providers should be practicing with a harm reduction lens in all aspects of our care because of the stigma that surrounds HIV and substance use disorder. Healthcare professionals need to be culturally competent and relevant to serve individuals of all ethnicities, religions, and social economical backgrounds. They need to understand and practice that with the understanding that non-abstinence recovery is a real thing and that abstinence only model absolutely does not work. And that the pathway to wellness is not linear and it's not a one size fits all solution. Everybody's pathway is going to look different. My pathway took a couple of U-turns and lefts and rights and more U-turns, but I got there. And it didn't take some professional to tell me how to get there. It took me figuring it out. I think communication between providers is huge in the aspect that we wouldn't have to relive certain traumatic experiences over and over and over if they could just communicate effectively. And it helps to hold us accountable as well. When your providers are communicating with each other, you can't go in there and drop some lie and say, "Oh yeah, I took my meds. Well, I heard from Doctor so and so that you missed last week." So it helps to hold us accountable for our own crap too. And I think that locally here in Colorado, we have an amazing model. It's called Vivint Health. So I'll explain a little bit more about the model. But I feel like with the open lines of communication, and because they are a one-stop shop, that all providers are located under the same roof, typically you won't have to wait for communication to happen to get your needs met, like you if you were normally referred out by your primary care to another specialist. And then I believe that implementation of trusted individuals and communities, such as a promotores or a community health worker type of model or a peer model, because having individuals who have the lived experience and know exactly what it is to go through these channels to find wellness, it leaves them set up for success.
Were y'all taking notes? That is that yes. More of that, please.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Chris, to
I'm like,
you.
how do I follow that? First of all,
Just say ditto.
that spider web was fantastic. It's a lovely analogy. I really got the visualization of that. That was top tier. Secondly, yeah, I mean, what Rika just said was perfect, right? I don't really have anything else to add. I think, for me, the biggest thing is like make sure you're doing your research, right? Make sure you know what organizations are out there and what things that you as a provider can do. Like have as many tools in your toolbox as possible, because not every person that walks in your room is going to what what you prescribe may not, or what you might suggest may not work for every person. And so if you can have as many tools in your toolbox to sort of like, okay, so this didn't work out, let's try this, right? And be in constant communication, again, that communication piece with other providers and other organizations to be like, okay, so what is working? How do you what are your systems, what's your processes, etc. I think that those are going to be really, really, really beneficial. um yeah, I don't know. I don't think I have much more to add to that. I think Rika, you really just you really knocked it out of the park.
All right, thanks, Chris. And of course, yes, communication is key. I think about all the drama, the struggle that we could avoid if we just had clear, intentional communication, even if that's just saying, I'm not okay and I need help. All right, MJ.
Well, I was really hoping I could go over Rika and I could just say ditto, but she really nailed it. Yep, that's why I love her so much. Um, I think for me, I'll tell you a little story about when as far as communication, you said it is the key. And not just communication between the patient and the doctor, or the patient and the psychologist, or the patient and your peer, I guess. I think the doctors need to confer together, like because not always like Rick and I are very lucky to go to Vivant Health and be able to have everything under one roof. We know communication is going from doctor to doctor. Um, Sometimes people living with HIV have very complex health issues, not just HIV. It has my kidneys failed due to that, and because of that, it was because there was no communication between my HIV doctor and my kidney doctor. When my kidneys failed, the doctor put me on prednisone and kept me on prednisone and kept me on prednisone, and months went by, and finally, I was pushing 300 pounds of water, and I looked like the Pillsbury Doughboy. I was like, I called my doctor and said, what's going on? Are you guys communicating? Because I feel like you're killing me and you've got me off HIV drugs. So I'm back to an AIDS status. And now, sure, my kidneys are getting better, but look at me, help. And they realized that they had not communicated. The kidney doctor said, what do you mean you're not taking HIV drugs? And I was like, well, because y'all ain't communicating. And so, because of that, I developed a bone disease called avascular necrosis from the prednisone. I've had two knees replaced and a hip replaced because of it. So, once again, it's all about communication. And I will say this as far as peers, I'm a peer and I love being in communication with my participants. If a participant calls me and says, MJ, I'm really sick, I need to go to the ER, will you come with me? I'm going to go with that person and help that person navigate that system. Because, and that's what I mean about, and why we've talked so much about peers. Sometimes the peer just wants to hold, or the participant just wants someone to hold their hand through the experience and not be treated badly because they're living with HIV and then substance use disorder. I mean, I've had doctors in Delta, Colorado. I walked in, I'm sick as can be. I was having a blood issue. I was like, I'm living with HIV, but I'm undetectable. He still took two steps backwards. So communication and all that is just what I think is what keeps everything cohesive in those plans, all the way around communication.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love the fact that you communicated. Are you all talking to each other? And believe it or not, some folks don't think that they can actually speak up and ask those questions. They just I show up and I do what you tell me. And so it is those folks like yourself that, speak up and lean into. And the peers that are able to assist and kind of sit with or ride along with and support them and say, "Hey, ask the question." Right, right. Thank you. And Miguel, to you.
I have so much to say.
Back to you.
Is that why you
Back to
saved me
you in
for
the
last?
studio.
No, totally kidding. So I don't work in HIV care. I'm not a medical professional. I don't work in the healthcare system or anything, but I've been positive for a long time, and I've gone to different I've gone to different clinics and stuff over the years, and I currently go to Vivint Health in Austin. That's my they're my healthcare provider. Yeah, and they provide dental, behavioral health, case management. Just it's really everything under one roof. It used to be AIDS Services of Austin, and I was lucky enough to have an intake appointment during COVID, right during the lockdown. And because I had gone moving here from Houston, I had gone for almost 2 years without taking my meds, because of really bad depression and my substance use. So, and even I don't work in the medical industry, but I there are definitely points that I've noticed, in HIV care and substance abuse care. I want to compound the point of understanding what harm reduction is, because like we understand what harm reduction means as a term, but in practice for people it really means, I mean, it's the possibilities are endless, and recovery is a conversation. It's really important to understand that it's a constant conversation, and reducing the harm that substance use has on the patient or the user, or the participant or whatever, it's really important to understand their journey and know what effect the substances are having in their life. For me, it was perpetuating this anxiety and depression. And like, for example, living in Texas, if I didn't have a car for the longest time, and the public transportation system here in Texas is abysmal. And especially with the weather and insane heat that we experience during the summer here, it is extremely difficult to get around places. And when the clinic is a 20-minute drive but a 2-hour bus ride, it really takes away from the motivation to actually do anything. That was a big reason, my substance use, into depression, into not being able to get out of bed in the morning, especially not to sit out in 100-degree weather to take the bus to, and maybe not having friends that could give me a ride every time I needed to go to the doctor or something. That really just, all those things just compounded into, almost 2 years of not taking my meds. And when I was going through, when I was kind of getting back on my feet, moving here to Austin and going, being able to go to my doctor's appointments and everything, getting out of active addiction, I think, was, I didn't know what peer support was. I had no idea what, like, that there was any other path available besides um besides the 12-step program or AA meetings and things like that. And what I understood of those meetings was that abstinence is how you, that's the way. It is the way. No, and you can go and you can talk about yourself as an addict for the rest of your life, and talk about yourself as a problem for the rest of your life. And so that thing was just hanging over my head the entire time. And so I was like, well, I can't do that. I've been through a lot of trauma as a kid, especially growing up in a religious cult. I feel like sitting around in a meeting and, being vulnerable in that way is something that I did that I was forced to do my entire childhood. just looking at myself as a sinner and that I'm the problem, constantly, and everything was just very not my, I couldn't bring myself to do that. So discovering that recovery is a plan that I plan for myself, that I understand myself better than anybody else could, really helped me come out of that. And I'm very lucky that my doctor at Vivint Health, my primary doctor, is studied substance use and studied addiction. And he sits down and talks to me about, like, every single time I go in, he catches up with me and he asks me where are you at with, now it's, whatever substances I use, or, my nicotine intake and things like that. And he has an actual conversation with me. It's not just, okay, hey, how you doing? Goes down a list and then leaves the room and, sends in the nurse. And so that really just changed my entire perspective on things, and actually having a conversation about that, because, like, my journey with addiction obviously is different from, a Black trans sex worker, or a 20-year-old Latin kid who goes out to the clubs every day, and that was me in my 20s. It's completely different for everybody, and understanding the effects of substance use on your patient is literally the key to understanding how to take care of them and how to treat them. The Something that was a really powerful statement for me was, and this was for me personally as much as it was, talking to other people, is go into it with curiosity. As much as you think about addiction, about HIV care, you know, about how someone should or could work with themselves, or how you could work with them, going into it with curiosity will always teach you something. And having that conversation and letting that person tell you what they need. And of course, at the end of the day, helping them understand how much therapy and talking to a behavioral health professional will help them, and that it's not some big thing that they need to be scared of. It's a conversation that they can have with somebody safe, and that can offer them an incredible amount of resources to pull them out of whatever they're in. The last thing I wanted to say, sorry, I think I'm going a little over time, but the last thing I wanted to say is, recently I had an experience with somebody that had reached out to me because they found out they were HIV positive, and they put off getting care or getting on medication or anything, because their healthcare provider, who was not experienced in HIV care or substance use or anything like that, the first thing that they said to them was, you have two options here. You can die of AIDS or take your meds. Just right out of the door. And that it broke my heart, because if I would have been told that, if I would have been told that when I first found out, I probably wouldn't be alive. Like, that would have ruined any chance of me understanding that I can be healthy and that I can move forward with my life, and that there were even options, So please don't ever do that.
It is, it's heartbreaking that still to this day, folks that are even newly diagnosed are not receiving the best bedside treatment. And so that just informs me that we still have our work cut out for us. We still need to be educating. We still need to be having those conversations and building community. And our community isn't just those that are directly affected, but also to people that are working in the field. And I think some of our bigger advocates are those peers working in the field. and in those workplace settings. And but I won't go there too far there. I'm going to switch things up. I know that there's probably a ton more different directions we can go with this, and as a matter of fact, best laid plans really aren't happening here. So switching up the questions here a bit, Rika, I'm going to come to you. We're going to talk a little bit about supporting employment, especially as it pertains to integration in recovery. So workplace integration is crucial. It's a crucial aspect of long-term recovery. Um, SAMHSA identifies some four dimensions: health, home, purpose, and community. Usually this employment kind of gets put into that purpose area sometimes. Um, and knowing that many people still in recovery face significant barriers to re-entering the workforce. From your perspective, and really panelists to all y'all, from your perspectives, how can employers create supportive and inclusive environments for individuals in recovery? What policies, procedures, practices, do you think that they could be implemented or come to mind?
Well, I'm trying to find my question because I know I took notes somewhere. So I think for me personally, so being, the leader of Promotores de Esperanza, I have been really looking for some kind of policy to implement around both SUD and HIV because that's what we specialize in. And so sometimes that looks like a four-day work week. Someday that can mean having, mental health days. Sometimes that could mean just having a wellness day. It doesn't have to be a mental health day. It's just a day where you take care of you, implementing, team activities. I mentioned before that 100% of our team are people with lived and living experiences. And so we've all been either incarcerated, we've, dealt with addiction, we've dealt with some type of trauma. And so for me, getting my team together and providing self-care activities for the entire team to be able to connect and be able to just have space and share space with each other and share what's kind of, similar struggles you're having. It really helps for when a person is struggling, they're not so reluctant to reach out and say, hey, I'm struggling. I need some support. I recently just had one of our contractors who reached out in a group text and explained to the whole group that he's been struggling with alcohol. And he decided to, do an inpatient um, or an outpatient, intense outpatient treatment program. And he let us all know what that looked like so that we can hold him accountable, so that we can help him to be able to say, hey, what you said in that text, I'm seeing that you're drinking a beer. And so, and we do it in gentle ways. Sometimes it looks like joking. Sometimes it looks like, hey, we need to have a serious discussion. So I think it's being able to know your team, to being able to know what your boundaries are and how far you can go with with individuals, but also letting them know that they have every right and they have a safe space to feel vulnerable, because vulnerability is hard. And if we don't know how to express vulnerability, it always gets bottled up and then we explode, and pardon my language, but that's typically when we hit the fuck it button and we find ourselves back in addiction and we find ourselves back in destructive behaviors and lifestyles. And it's not always just substance use. I have a problem shopping. Get me off of my phone. If you see me on an app, like take my phone away from me because that means I'm gonna be broke next week.
Did you just call me out?
Sorry, Joseph. This is what we do.
Oh,
We hold each other accountable.
absolutely. Absolutely. It was Candle Day today, and well, luckily, Part of my self-care is that I do not deny myself a good candle.
Well, hey, that's a hard balance there, but I say get the candle.
Hey, there you go. In regards to policies and procedures, it makes me think about something that we have here at Faces and Voices of Recovery. Um, we recognize that family looks different for a whole bunch of folks. And that being said, when it comes to bereavement, if we've lost someone that is family to us,
Yes.
previous policies and procedures say like, oh, okay, yeah, it needs to be your spouse or
Hmm.
immediate, parents. And I'm like, no, this is somebody that has seen me through my whole recovery. This is family.
Yep.
And we were able to change a lot of those policies and procedures around bereavement. So that's just a block of time, and you tell us when you're taking that and how to best support you. So even if somebody like I don't have kids, but when my eldest dog passed away, I needed some time, and I was
Hmm.
able to, take that time. And that goes into having those supportive policies and procedures and work environments as well.
Absolutely. That's beautiful. And fur babies are babies too.
That's right. I
We are
want
a
that shirt.
family.
I want that shirt for babies or babies too.
And chosen family is, they're the best. We can't choose our biological family, and so sometimes we want to kick them out, but our chosen family are the ones that we choose to surround ourselves with, and who are taking care of us. So absolutely, they're family.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Chris, to you.
Yeah, this is a great question. And although I don't like work in these like recovery fields, I have I'm thinking about my work experiences and like how I really put my recovery first. So like even in the interview process, I'm like, listen, I'm going to need to not work past certain times because I need to make my meetings, right? And if in that interview process I don't get a great response, then I don't continue the interview process because my recovery comes first, and I need to make that a priority for me. And so I've been really fortunate to work in places that have allowed that. In my current job, actually, my manager is also sober, and we go to meetings together, which is really lovely. It gives us both an opportunity to connect and also like disconnect in a way, right? We can sort of like leave the day, go to the meeting, and just be like, ugh, get it out. Um, and yeah, just talking about bereavement, like I lost um one of my closest people to me this year, and I had to take some time, and my last job was actually really good about just like letting me take that time and paying me for that time, which was really lovely. um I I think I don't know, just being honest, and letting folks know that this is what's going on, and like being like, I need to, um, there are these things that I need to do in order for me to show up as the best employee, right? And if management and whoever in HR aren't on board with that, then it probably isn't the best place to work, and just sort of keeping that top of mind. Um, and that's really it. I don't really have much more to add to that. Yeah.
Thank you. And yeah, that really does speak with if our values and principles don't align with our employers, like, should I be working here? Um, I'm mindful of time. I know we want to open up a Q&A. If Miguel or MJ, you wanted to chime in on this question before we open up for a Q&A.
I don't really have much to say, just ditto to, yeah. If you are in recovery, or if you do need time for, for doctor visits and things like that, like communicate with your employer and everything. Being a manager at several different places, that was really important. And while you're not as an employer, you're not directly responsible for people's decisions with their recovery or their substance use or anything like that. At the end of the day, productivity is equal to your employees' states of mental health. And so if you can afford them the time when they need to step back for a minute, or if they need, especially for medical visits and things like that, then it's extremely important and will benefit you and your workspace incredibly.
Agreed. Thank you.
Oops, power to the peers. So for me, it's just power to the peers. Employers should hire peers, and that way they have people on board to help folks that might be having problems that don't have peers. So that's my point.
Point taken. And I love it. And I agree.
Thank-
Thank you all. Thank you, panelists, so much. We're gonna take it to our Q&A. Patrick, if you could read what we have Q&A wise for us.
Absolutely. So we have, what slogan or message would you share to those hesitant to access HIV testing for fear of stigma, and how can HIV testers help eliminate these fears?
Who would like to take that? We can open that up.
I'll jump in real fast, only because I was an HIV tester at one point in time. But I found, again, like MJ said, power of the peer. I think for testers to help them eliminate fears, it was providing an education session prior to testing, if it's possible. I know it's not always possible, but for my experience, I used to go into all of the halfway houses here in Colorado, and I would go and provide an education session on HIV. And then I would also do one on hepatitis C. And then we would do rapid testing immediately after. And so anybody who had a fear that they might have contracted, they would come in to get tested, and then they would ask whatever questions that they had. So really being able to equip the tester with the knowledge and education that they need, including difficult conversations like, why breast milk? When do you what are the difficult questions? How is the HIV transmitted through breast milk? Another one I've had was through vaginal birth. And so having the testers equipped with the knowledge that they need to be able to answer those questions definitely can eliminate fear. And then slogan. So the slogan that I've always loved is respect yourself, protect yourself, because it puts some accountability for you to respect yourself. Like, you have to respect yourself in order to take care of yourself, right? And so that means you need to test yourself. So I love accountability. I talk about it all the time. Sometimes I need some more of it myself, though.
I never do.
I'm learning self-discipline because I'm now running an organization from my home. I need to really know, like, I need to step out of the house to get to work.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else? Slogans or some tips? Yeah, Miguel.
Yeah. As for yourself, if you think you have HIV, or you're afraid of getting tested, or you're afraid of what the results might be or what your life will look like, have compassion on yourself. There are endless resources, and it's I can tell you from experience that you're going to be okay. And knowing what's going on in your body, and becoming educated and finding out what your path might be, will make your life exponentially more positive, and build your self-confidence and build yourself up.
Excellent. Thank you. I heard a little, and I don't know if that is all right. Do we have another question there?
We do. Uh, So there is updated information about living with HIV. How is that being addressed in the ER and OBGYN providers?
is it? That's an excellent question. Panelists?
So again, I don't work in the medical field, but listening to people in the community and stuff, one thing that really stood out to me is that it's not HIV care and um, uh, transmission, HIV care and HIV transmission in women, and how that works in women is not presented a lot. Um, HIV drug testing apparently is not a big thing with women. It's mostly gay men, from what I understand. And so, like new drugs and everything, there's not a lot of testing cohorts that are women because statistically, predominantly gay men apparently contract HIV, which is not completely true, but in many communities, it is. But that's something that I've heard a lot. So as a medical care provider, if you know of a product or a medication or testing on HIV drugs or treatment or anything like that that are geared specifically toward women, um, display it or communicate that with your patients, and I think that would help make access to HIV care for women and care and transmission information, that would put them at ease a lot and help let them know that you provide a more largely encompassed treatment plan for HIV.
Yeah, and I think having, the peer there, power of the peer, especially when it comes to our our newer new information, peers should have that finger on the pulse of. And speaking of building out communities, PWN and I think MJ.
Wrong button. There you
There
go.
you
So sorry. I just want to say something real quick. Like the first question, like to me, I think communication, not only that, but using language matters. People first language. So we need to learn, as all of us sitting here have to learn to use the right language. We're not infected with HIV. We're this and that. We are living with HIV. Um, Words like, in fact, just so many words are stigmatizing. So I guess what I'm trying to say is be conscious of what you're putting out, because that'll help teach folks and help them feel more comfortable in their own skin, you know, because right where we had to get it from, I guess. But language does matter.
Absolutely. Thank you, MJ. And Rika.
Yeah, I was gonna say language justice as well, but I also kind of share just my experience from the question about the OBGN perspective. So I know that where I went for service and care, they had like super duper wealth of knowledge of, HIV. So when I decided to get pregnant with my daughter, I kind of had the similar experience where a doctor said, "Oh, well, if you're going to plan on having kids, you should probably have them now because you have HIV and now you've been diagnosed with cervical cancer, so you're going to die. And if you want to have kids, you probably should have kids like now." And so me just being not educated and not going in for a second opinion, I went and got my birth control taken out. I went and got pregnant and thinking, oh my God. And then I went to this amazing program called the CHIP program here in Colorado. It's the Child Human Immunodeficiency Program. And they were like, that doctor has no clue what the hell he was talking about. And in fact, you probably have a nice little lawsuit going on, but I didn't have the time or the energy to deal with any of that. So that experience was traumatic, but I ended up finding this amazing group who knew so much about HIV and having children. And so they, advised me do not, breastfeed. They advised me my first pregnancy in 2002, not to have a vaginal birth because there is additional risk factors there. And so by the time I had my child in 2012, that had all changed. And so there had been a lot of research, a lot of, um, you know, science that proved that mothers do not transmit through vaginal birth. And so I had my son naturally, whereas I had my daughter through a cesarean section. And it was so much easier. Let me say, it hurt, but it was so much easier. So OBGYNs in Colorado, if you go to specific ones, a lot of them are really educated about HIV and they will, advise you on what is, the safest avenue to go. But you do have those OBGYNs who are not educated and so some people have horrific experiences. But that was just my experience that I wanted to share.
Thank you for that. And again, it is knowing who knows, right? Knowing who knows of those providers that are keeping up with the times, up with the updated information, medication, all that jazz. And I think as peers that navigate the system, unfortunately, sometimes it's we have the negative experiences that we internalize and are able to learn from and help others so that they don't have to go through the same experiences. I would like to give our panelists a virtual round of applause, a sincere thank you so much. And panelists, I'm going to ask you if you could um, think about one word about either today's panel or about World AIDS Day to share with our attendees. Think about that as I do this little spot of information here, and then we'll go around the virtual panel room for that word, and then we'll wrap up here. Thank you again. So, for additional resources, we began our webinar or panel with Liz talking about NAHUD and a lot of those resources. So, for additional resources on substance use disorders and HIV, please visit the AIDS Education and Training Center, AETC, National Coordination Resource Center, the NCRC. And those websites and NAHUD's website will be dropped into chat now. Please don't forget to take that evaluation when it's sent out to you, along with the slide deck and Patrick's cell phone number. Just kidding. Just kidding. So let's go with that one word and we will close up our panel. Thank you again. And we're going to start off with Miguel.
It's a word I've said a few times throughout that is very important: curiosity. um, and a quick closing thought that I didn't mention during the panel is please do some research on the susceptibilities that Black trans women have in daily life, to come to a better understanding of how to help them and how to treat them, because through their susceptibility to daily violence and a lot of different things that could lead to HIV, care for them is extremely important. And yeah.
Thank you, Miguel. MJ.
I'm gonna steal Rika's word. Peer. I can say it enough. Peer. We need more peers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you for joining us today. It was great seeing you and great hearing you. And I can't wait to hear more. Chris, I'd noticed you even have the awesome ambiance with that flickering candle in the back.
Oh yeah, listen, candles. We can talk about it offline. I have two words: communication and grace. Those are the two words that I have. Just this, yeah, that's what's coming up. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you. And definitely not least, but last.
Okay, I gotta break it down to one. That's hard. Um, I'm gonna stay grateful. I'm grateful that I'm here today, living with HIV. I never thought I'd be here after 35 years, and here I be after all of the self-destructive avenues that I took in my crazy journey. But also, living with HIV and substance use disorder is like fighting two demons simultaneously with no weapons in an endless battle. And so I am definitely grateful that I have overcome both of those battles.
And so am I. I think I'm grateful for all of y'all and emotional and moved. And I am so glad that this is happening on a Friday because I get to process it all weekend. But thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you to Nakyud, and thank you to our attendees, and for those that will watch this over and over again on YouTube. YouTube stars, hey. Um, don't forget to complete your evaluation, and hopefully we get to see you again here in the future. Y'all have a nice weekend. Stay safe, and bye-bye.